Thank you, everyone. It's a great honour to be here. I'm not a Nuffield scholar, so I'm just a mere farmer. And
get off.
That's easy, done. Right, today, so I'm Duncan Farrington from Farrington's Mellow Yellow. We grow, press and bottle rapeseed oil on our farm. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got started and interested in that. And then I'm going to move on just to ponder a few more thoughts on other commodity crops in general. So my interest in public health benefits from eating a healthy diet started with research on rapeseed oil at university back in 1991. I discovered that rapeseed oil had many health benefits simply not recognised in the UK. Such benefits increased when the oil is cold pressed. In other words, it's just squeezed from the seed without any further refining or processing, producing a quality natural product. And to give some background to this, traditionally in Northern European industrialised countries, the population had high levels of chronic heart disease or CHD, whereas countries like Japan or the much talked about Mediterranean regions had much lower levels. Now the difference in this is believed to be associated with cholesterol intake and its concentration in the body. Whilst genetic predisposition to chronic heart disease has a larger effect than diet, studies have shown that diet is the main factor associated with lowering the cholesterol levels in the Japanese and in the Mediterranean populations. Whereas in countries such as Britain, the diet has been traditionally high fat. It's been large amounts of saturated fats, mainly from animal sources. Whereas if you take the Japanese diet, and we've just seen Jane with her pictures of the rice, their diets have been diets consisting of large amounts of rice and fish. Or in the Mediterranean diet, it consists of fresh fruit, vegetables, unsaturated fats, and in particular from olive oil. And research on the effects of these different diets on human health was showing interesting results. And this is where I got really quite excited. I'm not a nutritionist, but I read the papers and found them particularly interesting. And in particular, the Leon Hart study was one where they tried to replicate the Mediterranean diet, but more for a Northern European context. They included rapeseed oil in the diet, because we don't grow olive oils very successfully here in Nottinghamshire or other parts of Britain. It included the rapeseed oil, but along with a lowering of red meat consumption, increased fruit and vegetables, and whole grain products, and it had a dramatic effect on helping to lower chronic heart disease levels. And people like myself, adult males, we were the main ones where the effects were shown very dramatically and very quickly. So with all this nutritional information on rapeseed oil, and here are some figures showing it. Rapeseed oil itself, in many ways, is far superior than olive oil. And this isn't a raving advert for Mellow Yellow or rapeseed oil. Olive oil, I think, is a great oil. They do complement each other. But when you look up there, rapeseed oil has the lowest saturated fat of any of them. Not only that, it has the highest content of omega-3. This is the one that is crucial in cholesterol reduction. It contains antioxidant vitamins, vitamin E, for example. And also it has twice the amount of plant sterols in there compared to the other oils on that list. So it is a very healthy oil. From a consumer point of view, the bottom line is it also has a high smoke point. So it makes it, I could say, it made it potentially versatile in the kitchen. However, other countries around Europe, and especially the Finns, were taking this very seriously, and they were starting to run with the idea of rapeseed oil in their diet. Whereas us Brits, we were not interested. We were a bit scared. In fact, I had a researcher say to me at one time when I asked him, why aren't we doing more about promoting rapeseed oil as an industry in the UK? And he said his answer was simple. Duncan, you will never market something with the word rape in its name. I think he was right, but in time I thought I could challenge that. And eventually in 2005, following my growing intrigue, passion, and not least to mention the need for more income on the family farm, I launched Farrington's Mellow Yellow. It was Britain's first farm-produced, cold-pressed rapeseed oil, grown, pressed and bottled on our family farm in Northamptonshire. Now at this point, I had the knowledge about the health benefits of rapeseed oil. I had the engineering experience and the agricultural experience to put it in a bottle, but would I be able to make it sell? Would people want it? And especially with that thought in my mind about you're never going to market something called rape. So it was time to call on family and friends. So what we did, my wife cooked supper and we had family and friends round and we had a brainstorming session. And by the end of the evening, the kitchen wall was covered in Post-it notes. But Mellow Yellow as a brand had been born that night. And following on from that, I thought that was a good start. But also you need to make it look good, because people initially buy with their eyes. So again, we've got the provenance of grown on my farm. We've got the environmental credentials. It's got the leaf mark, independently audited environmental credential. But it could be the best product in the world. But if it looks terrible, no one's ever going to pick it off the shelf. So at this point, Ellie came in again, and she worked with the designer, and the flower petal design came along. And then she was adamant, we've got to make it look good. It's got to have a cap that looks to quality cap to go with the product. So we came up with a cream cap. It's got the word Farrington's around it and a flower petal on the front. Obviously, you can't see from at the back. But we had these done. So, these caps, there was a minimum order of 70,000 caps. At this stage, I was getting a little nervous because I hadn't even thought out what price it was going to be and whether we could sell it. But if I had been left to it, it probably would have looked a little bit more agricultural. So I was absolutely adamant we had to make it look right. And I was also adamant that I needed to find the right marketplace for it. Because if we were going to make this a sustainable business, I needed to do more than just sell the first bottle. I needed people to buy the second bottle, not when I'm badgering them at a food show saying how wonderful it is and they take away a bottle just to shut me up. But when they're at home or when they're in the supermarkets or in the farm shops down the road, I wanted them to buy the second bottle. If they can do that, they're more likely to be a long-term customer. So we marketed it not as a health oil, not as an expensive medicine, but as an appealing, delicious, versatile culinary oil, and in an attempt to give it a wider audience. And when it was first spotted with Nigella Lawson in her hand seductively splashing it over the food she was doing in her cookery programmes, I thought the chances were we were onto a winner. In the first year, we produced 6,500 bottles. Still another 73,500 caps left. I had 80 independent customers around the country. After 4 years, it had the same turnover as the family farm, and I am a fourth-generation farmer, so it's taken us all that time to get there. And in 4 years, I thought business was about breaking even, but I suddenly realised you could do something and make a bit of money, which it helps. Now, some 12, 13 years later, we produce more bottles in one day than we did in the whole of the first year. We sell to national and independent retailers. We count some of the best chefs in the country as our customers. We export a little, and we've even welcomed royalty to our farm. And this is when the Duke of Gloucester came back in 2015 to look at our 2 shiny new tanks. Those tanks are still there, but behind me there, we're now building the next process, and we're doubling the size of the capacity again. So Farrington's Mellow Yellow, it's been a great success. It's something I'm really proud of. I set out to create a small diversification to supplement our income from the farm. It has far exceeded my initial ambitions. We employ 12 people. We can continue to grow our little business. However, I'm conscious that the timing was key. And what I started in 2005 might not have been a success in 1995, for example. Back then, 20 or so years ago, environmental provenance was becoming key. We were all thinking about our environmental footprint. But as we've heard earlier, were people thinking about health and their healthy diet? Probably not. But this has changed over the last few years, and people are now looking for foods with better health credentials. And to back this up, here's a graph from Mintel, and this is showing food product launches worldwide over the last 15 or so years with environmentally friendly messaging, but also so-called lifestyle or health choices. The big one there, vegetarian, the light blue one, that's grown dramatically, and so have others. Or this next slide, another Mintel one. This shows the worldwide product launches for foods with gluten claims. And we've heard about gluten earlier. This is probably marketed at those people out in the park that Caroline showed us. They have it, but they don't know what it's all about. But Latin America is very high, but that's mostly driven by legislation in Brazil. North America and Australasia, Jane's obviously doing a good job over there because the food launches in those countries are much higher than we are. Europe's lagging behind a little bit. So there's more than we can do. Or this slide, this is just a Google Trends slide we took, looking at 4 or 5 different areas. So lifestyle choices. So vegan in this one has grown dramatically in the last 5 years. Vegetarianism's grown, gluten's grown, and organic, the environmental one, it is growing, but it is very much static. It's similar to where it was a few years ago. With this background, I think we should all take the opportunity to grow healthy food crops that the consumers are obviously looking for. However, I have heard people say to me, well, it's fine for you, you know, you've got your nice bottle, you're very niche, but how's that going to help me and help British agriculture? I do think they are missing the point, though. When we look at Kantar figures, and these are our figures that we get off Kantar, they are a bit more updated now, but to the right, it shows the growth. It's not the size of the market, it's showing the growth. Now, coconut oil, I can talk about in a bit if you like. The green bar is a lot of people are going into coconut oil. That's where the growth is coming from. However, the other bars, the purples and the blues, they're in negative growth. So a lot of people are buying coconut oil once, and then they aren't buying it again, and we can talk about that later if you like. Look just below that, cold-pressed rapeseed oil. It's growing at 25% year on year. We've got a big green bar, so people are coming into the market, but we've got the 2 blues as well. People are going and buying a second bottle, and that's great. And then come further down, look at rapeseed oil in general, refined rapeseed oil. People are buying that as well. That's growing at 31% a year. Now, I think that's probably buying by association of what myself and others are doing on the cold-pressed arena. People are buying rapeseed oil in general because they are now understanding it's good for you. They don't know why, but they're buying into it. Surely, between us all, that has got to help British agriculture and food brands alike. Looking at other commodity crops, what are the opportunities? And there are several. So let's start with wheat. So we've already heard how wonderful and the genetic breeding programs going on wheat are. But wheat is a great source of carbohydrates, protein, fibre, vitamins and minerals. Now I'm from Northamptonshire, and there's one company that I know very well in Northamptonshire. Weetabix has been producing Britain's favourite cereal since 1932. It makes the UK's favourite breakfast cereal. They are exporting to over 80 countries worldwide from the Northamptonshire mills, and they're consuming 100,000 tonnes of wheat from within 50 miles of those mills. This is certainly not niche. This is mainstream. But even established brands like Weetabix are looking at product development, and now they've launched one of the many things they've launched are their new high-protein Weetabix because people are interested in the health of their breakfast cereal. As Tina has already said, wheat can benefit from breeding programs and also from agronomy to increase or specialise the nutritional qualities of the crop. It could be the added health benefits of, say, increased fibre variance or selenium-rich examples. And this area can directly improve or affect and benefit the commodity farmer. What about barley? Jane mentioned barley a little bit. And barley, it's a crop that we don't traditionally think of as something to consume, to eat ourselves in this country. It either goes into malting or whiskey or straight into animals. But if back in the Bronze Age, barley was consumed. We ate it. It was naked barley. And if you can remove that indigestible husk, and you can benefit from a cereal that has a higher beta-glucan content. So it's a slow-releasing form of energy. And naked barley can help reduce cholesterol and provide that slow energy release. So breeding programs, they are at early stages, but it could be something to watch for the future. Oats, however, they're very definitely here. And we're all consuming more and more oats for breakfast. So I visited some friends of mine just down the road on their farm in Huntingdonshire, Philip and Rebecca Rayner. And I thought they were going to tell me all about the health benefits of oats. But actually, all they've done, they have identified that growth in gluten-free demand from both consumers and food manufacturers. They've set up a successful business on their farm. They're now consuming and processing they are now processing and making 100% gluten-free guaranteed oat products for both consumers and for food manufacturers. They make several thousand tonnes a year, and exports account for 15% of their business. One area where I think the opportunities are great are pulses. We've heard a little bit about them earlier. They don't tend to get good press. They may be thought of as a bit of a hippie food. You may be sitting next to an enlightened person that's, got a good, healthy glow about them. They may be the ones consuming beans, but the flatulence might be a bit of an issue. In the UK, farmers like myself, we grow favour beans. We don't tend to know much about them. They go on a lorry and they go somewhere in, North Africa maybe, where they use them for food. But actually, up until the Victorian era, in Britain, pulses were a staple part of the diet because they were harvested dry, they could be stored over the winter months, and they were a good source of protein, as we know. Then the Victorians came along and they made broad beans and they turned them into a vegetable. However, over recent years, this has started to maybe change a bit because although we've broadly forgotten about pulses in our diets, we are eating a bit more of an exotic menu. And things like hummus and falafels are becoming more widely consumed. And as you can see, this slide here is a whole list of why pulses are good for you. I'm not going to go through it all, but they're very high in fibre. It's slow releasing energy again. Obviously, they're high in protein. They've got virtually nil fat, and it's an incredibly nutrient-dense food. We ought to be having more of it. And with such a positive dietary message, I am surprised no one's doing this. I think this is another cold-pressed rapeseed oil moment waiting to happen. But there's almost zero companies in the UK that are taking advantage of this, apart from one I've found. A company called Hodmedod. The three founders of it were originally asked by Norwich City Council to do a sustainability project on food sustainability for Norwich. And one of the things they did, they got packets of split favour beans, bagged them up, they sent them out to local community groups with a little postcard in there asking for feedback. The feedback came back overwhelmingly positive on what a great product and a great idea. So they looked for someone to manufacture and start a food brand. They couldn't find anyone. So they've ended up making their own food brand, and they're doing very well. It's early days. And also, they found one of the things that people are interested in is that pulses generally come from countries where the traceability isn't so good. And people are loving the idea of fully traceable British pulses. Finally, I'd like to introduce Stephen Jones to you. He started the British quinoa or quinoa or however you say it company. Now, I've not met him. I spoke to him on the phone. He's got passion oozing out of him. He started in 2006 looking at trying to grow quinoa in Britain. It took him until 2013 before he first had success. When I spoke to him, he's now looking at loads of other different crops. He's moved on from quinoa now. But quinoa is a highly nutrient-dense food. It's gluten-free again, high in protein, and it's one of the few plant foods that contain all 9 essential amino acids. It's also high in fibre, minerals, vitamins, and antioxidants, so it's a good product. So Stephen is now working with 14 farmers that grow the crop for him. He started his company, British Quinoa Company, or Quinoa Company, and I think he's got huge potential, and his brand's got huge potential in many different food uses. So, in conclusion, the demand for plant-sourced nutritional foods will continue to grow worldwide, as will demand for food and food brands with provenance, so it could be craft or grown on my farm, less processing, so in this case it could be cold pressed, clean ingredients list, so additive-free ingredients, environmental credentials, leaf mark. We already grow the crops in Britain. We just need to recognise the healthy food potentials from them. Farmers producing commodity crops should play a vital role in public food health. But not every farmer wants to get up there and do what Stephen's done or maybe what I'm doing, but farmers are vital and we need to talk with each other. Entrepreneurial farmers and food manufacturers should work with plant breeders, food nutritionists and health professionals to develop healthy foods, and this is very important, this is what Jane touched on. It's got to be foods that the consumer wants, so marketeers as well. You've got to get all your ducks in a row. But that does come with a health warning of its own. We've got to make sure that we give consumers what they actually need and not what they think they want. And sometimes, especially with social media, and we saw earlier, I think, was it in Caroline's talk about all the, and Susan's talk with all the celebrities out there, social media endorsements, they sometimes get a bit confused. We don't want to jump on a bandwagon just because it's trendy. Talk niche, but think big. Healthy foods is no longer just a hair shirt thing. It is mainstream. And finally, talk to people from different backgrounds, because different people's experiences and thoughts are invaluable. And what a better place to do that than here today with the events like today. The Nuffield Trust, it's something that the Nuffield Trust excels at. So we do it in the breakout sessions, but talk to people, hear from other people's experiences, and then we can all benefit from it. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.